The internet has been busy discussing just how good and overpowered Lene is, but I think some of them, or maybe some of you, forgot that we actually have two other banners rerunning at the same time as Lene's, and both of them should not be underestimated in terms of their strength, especially CARTETHYIA. But is she still relevant and strong even now? And is her banner still worth pulling? Don't worry my friends, today we are going to do a character analysis on Carte, breaking down her strengths and weaknesses, so that we will know later if her performance is still relevant up until now. Before we begin, please hit the like and subscribe button. After that, let's get this video started. CARTETHYIA is a 5-star limited aero main DPS. Her playstyle revolves around utilizing negative status such as aero erosion, whether it's applying the effect to enemies, increasing her own damage, or dealing attacks that are considered erosion damage themselves. As for her kit, let's briefly go over it. She has two modes, the small form and the large form. These two modes serve very different roles. All you need to know about small CARTETHYIA is that her main function is to apply erosion, meanwhile the large form is the one that consumes those erosion stacks and converts them into a massive damage increase. Small CARTETHYIA can inflict erosion through her intro skill, basic attack stage 4, and her resonance skill. She is also responsible for collecting 3 different types of swords, each providing a different buffs. Once you obtain these swords, you can simply consume them by performing plunge attack. These buffs will then be granted, transferred, and utilized by CARTETHYIA's large form. This large form is where the core of CARTETHYIA's damage comes from. After performing several attacks and skills while consuming erosion stacks along the way, she will accumulate her new Forte Gauge. Once it's fully charged, she can unlock her second ultimate and unleash her most powerful attacks. CARTETHYIA actually has a very solid kit because she can basically handle everything on her own. She has access to many buffs and most of them are quite significant. For example, while in her small form, your goal is to collect the 3 swords while simultaneously inflicting erosion. One of these swords later grants a powerful buff to Fleur-de-Lis, with one of the effects being a massive 50% erosion damage amplification, which significantly boosts CARTETHYIA's damage in her large form. The second sword also provides decent sustain for Fleur-de-Lis as it increases her resistance to interruption. CARTETHYIA's damage also increases when her target is affected by erosion, gaining 10% damage increase per stack. Since the maximum erosion stacks can be increased by 3, either with Aero Rover or Chisa, this translates into a total of 60% increased damage against a single enemy. The second reason CARTETHYIA can technically handle everything on her own is the fact that she's not only apply erosion by herself, but can also manipulate this negative status. At basic attack stage 4, she applies 1 stack of erosion, while her intro skill and resonance skill each apply 2 stacks. This means she can apply up to 5 erosion stacks per rotation, allowing her to full play around with the stacks she generates herself. For example, one of the sword buffs allows Fleur-de-Lis attacks to increase the erosion stacks of nearby enemies to match the highest stack count among the remaining enemies. This is extremely valuable when dealing with multiple targets. And it doesn't stop there. This sword buff also reduces the erosion interval by 50%, meaning erosion procs faster and enemies take damage more frequently from erosion alone. It's safe to say that CARTETHYIA has full control over erosion. On top of her damage and HP scaling multipliers, she also manipulates her own health, which brings us to the third reason why CARTETHYIA can handle everything by herself: self-sustain. After dealing damage and performing multiple abilities in Fleur-de-Lis mode, she accumulates Conviction Forte. Once it's fully charged, she can unleash her second ultimate, where she literally cuts the sea in half. Activating this ultimate restores 50% of her max HP. However, there is a trade-off. When she first activates her ultimate and enters Fleur-de-Lis mode, her HP is reduced to 50% of her maximum health. Besides CARTETHYIA's self-sufficiency, her kit also allows her to perform exceptionally well in both single target and AoE scenarios. And since most of her damage is dealt in Fleur-de-Lis mode and many of her attacks are performed mid-air, enemies that can't fly may have harder time reaching and damaging her. This makes her combos more difficult to interrupt. She also gains increased resistance to interruption to help mitigate staggering. While the value is not massive, it's still a very welcome bonus. Beyond that, she offers additional utility, such as the ability to stagnate enemies for a few seconds, which helps smooth out her rotations. One of her inherent skills also enhances the healing provided by her teammates and increases their resistance to interruption. Furthermore, CARTETHYIA has a special synergy with Aero Rover, allowing both of them to restore their forte more efficiently. And honestly, I don't know if this is still relevant, but I genuinely think she has one of the best ultimate animations in the game. All of her self buffs, reliable erosion application, and wide variety of combat utilities, CARTETHYIA can truly become a monster on the battlefield. she's an extremely reliable investment if you are looking for a negative status DPS, as long as you equip her with the best echoes, her signature weapon, and of course, premium team compositions. You might think these strengths are enough to keep her relevant in the meta, however you need to know the harsh truth about CARTETHYIA. When it comes to character building and team composition, these are the very factors that can make all that rainbow and sunshine suddenly fade, giving rise to a storm instead. It's true, CARTETHYIA can deal a huge amount of damage, especially when facing endgame content that's tailored to her strengths. However, that performance is heavily supported by the weapon and the team built around her. CARTETHYIA desperately needs her signature weapon to perform at her best. This is because her damage primarily scales with HP, which severely limits her weapon options. Can you even name a sword that truly synergizes well with her? Honestly, there are almost none, except maybe a 3-star weapon, the Guardian Sword, which provides 30% HP as its main stat. Outside of that, most weapons simply wouldn't work particularly well with her. You could try 5-star crit weapons as stat sticks, but those weapons are fundamentally designed to benefit attack scaling characters, not CARTETHYIA. This is exactly why her signature weapon provides such a massive amount of HP, granting up to 72% bonus HP. This is not just to increase her personal damage, but also to compensate for her extremely limited weapon variety. Because of this, if you're planning to pull for CARTETHYIA, you should strongly consider pulling her weapon as well. If that's not an option, then unfortunately skipping her might be the smarter choice. Unless, of course, you pull characters purely because you like them, not because of the meta. And her weapon issue alone is not the only reason players might hesitate to pull for her. Her flexibility in team compositions is another major concern. By now, we know that CARTETHYIA can handle almost everything on her own: self-buffs, utility, erosion application, and even erosion manipulation. However, all of that alone is still not enough, and more importantly, it's not optimal for maximizing her damage output. CARTETHYIA can apply up to 5 stacks of erosion by herself, and since more erosion stacks directly translate into higher damage for her, this sounds great on paper. The problem is that erosion has a default cap only 3 stacks, which means a portion of her damage potential ends up being wasted, unless you bring a character that can increase the maximum erosion cap. And yes, those characters are Aero Rover and Chisa. Both of their outro skills can increase the maximum erosion stacks by 3. With this setup, CARTETHYIA's own erosion application no longer goes to waste, allowing you to maximize her inherent skills. And then we arrive at the support issue. As we know, CARTETHYIA's small form is mainly responsible for applying erosion, while Fleur-de-Lis mode is the one that consumes it. Some of Fleur-de-Lis attacks actively reduce erosion stacks, which means you ideally want a support that can apply erosion consistently and independently, so Fleur-de-Lis can stay in rampage mode without worrying about erosion running out. This is where ciaccona comes in. Ciaccona's ultimate continuously applies erosion, and more importantly, it does not get interrupted or cancelled when you switch characters. This allows CARTETHYIA to keep attacking freely while ciaccona takes care of erosion application in the background. On top of that, ciaccona's outro skill can amplify erosion damage by up to 100%. As of now, ciaccona is the only character who can directly increase CARTETHYIA's damage in such a significant way, and she is a limited 5-star unit. This ultimately leads us to a clear conclusion. CARTETHYIA is an expensive character, and is not beginner or new player friendly. She heavily relies on her signature weapon to perform properly, and one of her best supports is also a limited character. This can become a major issue, especially for players who don't want to spend their astrites just to pull for ciaccona, a character they may not necessarily like or enjoy playing. Even with ciaccona on the team, this does not always solve CARTETHYIA's problems right away. While this can depend on a player's skill level, using CARTETHYIA in endgame content like Wuthering Waves can be quite tricky. The main issue is that the constant respawn of enemy waves, which force you to repeatedly reapply erosion from scratch. Now imagine how much more difficult this becomes if you are playing her without ciaccona in the team. On top of that, her second ultimate carries an enormous amount of damage, which means you need to use it very carefully. Ideally, you want to finish off the current wave of enemies while simultaneously building up her Conviction Gauge. If you carelessly use her finishing blow at the wrong time, it can easily become a huge waste. The most efficient strategy is often to hold this ability until the next wave of enemies respawns, allowing you to maximize its value. And this might also explain why CARTETHYIA is currently placed in Tier 1 category on Pride when it comes to ciaccona and CARTETHYIA, there is always an ongoing debate. Is this Bard Lady actually a must-have for CARTETHYIA? Some players say that ciaccona is absolutely mandatory if you want to play CARTETHYIA, otherwise your account is basically doomed. While others argue that this is misinformation, claiming that CARTETHYIA performs just fine even without ciaccona. As we discussed earlier, CARTETHYIA does technically rely on ciaccona, which makes her team compositions quite restricted and expensive. With ciaccona alone, CARTETHYIA's damage can increase by roughly 40%, and she also makes CARTETHYIA's gameplay feel significantly smoother. That said, I do agree that Kuro designed CARTETHYIA's kit in a way that allows players to use a quick swap playstyle between her normal form and Fleur-de-Lis mode. You can apply erosion first, then transform into Fleur-de-Lis, attack for a few seconds, and swap back to her normal form to reapply erosion, and then swap back again to Fleur-de-Lis to land a finishing blow. This way, Fleur-de-Lis won't lose too many erosion stacks. If you can truly master this kind of gameplay, it's entirely possible to play CARTETHYIA without ciaccona and still clear endgame content just fine. However, some players simply prefer comfort. For them, quick swap gameplay can feel too complicated or mentally taxing, which is why they choose to pull ciaccona instead, since she is basically a KOL for CARTETHYIA, and honestly, I'm that kind of player too. So to sum it up, it's not misinformation to say that CARTETHYIA's full potential is locked behind ciaccona. That is a real limitation, but it does not mean CARTETHYIA becomes useless without her. In conclusion, CARTETHYIA is still a very strong unit in the current meta, especially if you already have her premium setup, including her signature weapon, ciaccona, and possibly Chisa. However, since she can now be considered as an older unit whose banner has already rerun multiple times, I think it's wise to complete her premium team if you plan to keep using her. That way, she can remain relevant and continue to compete with future characters. And that's it for today's video. I hope this analysis helped clear up any doubts you might have about whether CARTETHYIA is still worth pulling. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future Wuthering Waves content. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!